Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 11:30. I think we're going to start our presentation right now because I know Tim has a lot of background to go. So before we start, good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Gabriela Zambrano, and I'm the director of the Houston MBDA Business Center. This is our third in a series of webinars, and I appreciate your patience with us as we get accustomed to virtual technology. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone that this video is being recorded, and if you have any questions during the presentation, please write it in the chat room. Now, I'd like to introduce my colleagues. You may not be able to see them, but they are actually on the call. It's Mark Prague and Deidre Sutton, business advisor, and our office manager, Jessica Vasquez. Our next MBDA webinar speaker is Nicole Bello from Smarter HR Solution. It will be held right here next Wednesday, April 22nd, beginning at 11:30 a.m. The topic will be Employers, What Now from an HR Perspective. Our speaker today is Small Business Administration Houston District Director Tim Jeffcoat. Before we begin, I want to thank Tim and his team for working day and night since this pandemic started. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tim Jeffcoat. Tim, I think you're on mute.
There, now I'm not muted.
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Looking forward to talking to you about some ways that the SBA can help you through this COVID situation. You can go ahead, Gabriella. What we're going to talk about is first, and I think this is very important, is some non-monetary assistance that you can get from the US SBA. Then we'll talk a little bit about the funding programs that are in place to support your business, and then a few extra resources we're aware of that could be helpful for you. Really importantly, at the bottom of the screen, you see the SBA Houston website address. If you go to that website address, on the left-hand side under coronavirus resources, you will see these slides and some other documents or files that could be pertinent for what you're facing right now. Go ahead, Debbie. First, I want to talk about some non-monetary assistance that we have for you. We've got 3 direct partners of the SBA. We call them resource partners, and we help fund these organizations. Between them, they have about 250 people in the Houston district, which is 32 counties, but centered around Harris County. And they can help you with a whole variety of things. So the Texas Gulf Coast Small Business Development Centers, SCORE Mentors, and the WBEA Women's Business Center. Right now, you may be facing a cash flow crunch. They can sure help you figure out how to negotiate that. Or maybe right now help you with some social media plans to message and stay in touch with the customers that you're not doing much business with at the moment. Some clients are having trouble getting their goods in and out of ports, or your supply chain is being disrupted, or you're worried that it could become disrupted because as you are being affected by COVID, your supply chain may also be affected. They can help you with all of that, but I'd really like to focus on these bottom 2. I think these are the most important ones. At a point during this COVID economic disaster, you're going to have some time on your hands, and I would encourage you to use it for strategic planning for your business, to be able to determine the best ways to exit this disaster and grow your business and prosper. And then we know that this won't be the last disaster that your business ever faces. So this is also a terrific time to use these great resources to help you plan for how to respond to further disasters, whether that's a complete risk assessment of your organization or looking at new insurance or augmented insurance to support your organization, or other plans to make sure that you can get through the next disaster with no problems. Go ahead. Next slide. Now let's talk about some of the financial assistance that's available. First, I'm going to refer you directly to the CARES Act so that you can see what it says. It signed into law March 27th. That was a Friday afternoon. We are able to talk about how it affects the SBA and how that has affected the systems and the solutions that we can provide. We can't really talk about anything that doesn't directly affect the SBA, or we can't interpret the legality or the legal issues in the CARES Act. But that link at the bottom tells you exactly where to go in order to find the complete CARES Act. Next slide. And this slide just shows you an example of right there. You can see section 1102 is the Paycheck Protection Program. And then section 1110 is the Emergency Economic Injury Disaster Loan Grants. And that both of those together is maybe 15 pages worth of content. It doesn't take very long to get through that. Next slide. Right now, you have a current SBA 504 or micro loan, or you may have something called a Community Advantage loan. And the SBA is paying your loan right now. We began on March 27th, and we will be paying your loan for the next 6 months. That's principal, interest, and fees. If you have an existing disaster loan, then we have automatically deferred that for you. This is on your business. We've automatically deferred that disaster loan for you until December 31 of 2020. If you have either one of those, then you are getting some immediate relief right now. Right? Let's go ahead to the next slide. So with the passage of this act, you've basically got two choices now: the economic injury disaster loan or the Paycheck Protection Plan loan. That's the loans directly from the SBA. We'll talk about it first. And then the PPP is from an existing lender. The important thing is that you are an affected business, and the CARES Act says you are affected, and that you are an eligible business. And we'll talk more about that as we go through, but the vast majority of businesses out there, easily 99% of the businesses in existence, are eligible. Go ahead. Next slide. If you or you know of any faith-based organizations, they aren't often included in being eligible for normal SBA financing, but they are eligible for this disaster financing. Next slide. There's also been an eligibility update. Normally farms and ranches, they require, or rather they receive assistance from the U.S. Department of Agriculture as opposed to the SBA. Right now, it is open so that they can apply for the PPP or EIDL loan to support those agricultural operations. Next slide. Let's talk about the disaster loan. These are up to $2 million. No payment for the first 12 months after you've been dispersed the money. 3 3/4% interest rate. Repayment up to 30 years. In most cases, it will be 30 years. Again, that's a small business, a small ag co-op, private nonprofits, and now religious organizations and farms and ranches. It's intended to be used for your operating expenses. So your fixed debts, your payroll, your accounts payable, and those other bills that have been affected by the disaster. And it can be approved solely on your credit score. Next slide. There's no cost to apply. Since we're the federal government, there are no fees for this thing. The amount gets determined by us. So the information that you give us, basically you're going to give us 3 numbers when you apply, and then we may ask for some additional supporting information. But you're going to tell us your revenues of your organization, your costs, number of employees. Based on that, we will be able to recommend to you a loan amount. If you have an existing SBA loan of any sort, that doesn't make you ineligible for this. There's no personal guarantee unless the loan is over $200,000. And there's no collateral. We do want to take it over $25,000 if we can, but you won't be declined for a lack of collateral. In Texas, you can't pledge your primary residence, so it's never used for collateral. Next page. A new twist, you might say, to the economic injury disaster loan, which has existed for quite a long time, is that until December 31 of this year, you are able to receive a grant that comes along with the EIDL loan up to $10,000, and that's determined by $1,000 per employee. Now, remember, 1099s are not employees; those are contractors. This is per employee. Repayment isn't required, even if you subsequently are not approved for the loan. You can use this for normal business expenses, such as the examples you see there in front of you. Specifically spelled out in the CARES Act are sick leave for employees, payroll to retain employees, increased supply chain costs, rent or mortgage payments, and other obligations that can't be met because you have a loss in revenue at the moment. You can receive an EIDL loan and a PPP loan. You just have to make sure that you segregate the costs that you claim so that they're unique to each of those loans. I'll talk a little bit more about that. Next page, please. There we are. Now, to apply for the economic injury loan, you go to that website, sba.gov/disaster, and you'll have to do a little navigating when you get there, but it'll take you to the application process. And at any time, you can contact our customer service department. They work a lot of hours, and you can see the 800 number there, their email address, which is monitored by the same hours, as well as a TTY line for those that are hearing impaired. Next page. Now what we're going to show you is the actual application that is online. There's basically 5 steps. You can see these 5 icons across the top. We ask for a few disclosures, some information about the business and its owners, a little additional information related to the business. We present you with a summary screen, kind of like when you're checking out, buying something online, so you can review your entries and click submit. Next screen. So first, we need to know what kind of an entity is this. The majority are going to click one of the first 2. Either you are a business, and that's any kind of business, whether it's a sole prop, a partnership, an LLC, a C Corp, a subchapter S, whatever it is, doesn't matter. So a business with not more than 500 employees. The next one could apply to you. You're an individual who operates as a sole proprietor, with or without employees, or as an independent contractor. Be a co-op, an ESOP, or a tribal business concern. Those are the next 3 with that 500 employee limitation. You can be a variety of agricultural and nursery type operations that are subject to our small business size standards that are referenced there. So you would look up your size standard to make sure you fit. You can have more than 500 employees and still be considered small. There are quite a few businesses here in Houston. It's not uncommon for manufacturing operations and refinery operations to have up to 1,500 employees and still be considered small. So just because you have more than 500 doesn't mean that you can't be approved. So that next to the last one, and you would then double check your size standard to make sure what your employee count would be. And then finally, the last one explains that you can be a nonprofit that is organized as a 501c or E. Next screen. Here we're going to ask you a few questions, and we want you to be able to check all of these to say that they apply. that you're not engaged in illegal activity, that owners with more than 50% are within 60 days on their child support obligations. You're not an ag enterprise, which that one should be removed now because ag is now allowed. You don't present live performances of a prurient sexual nature, derive more than a third of your revenue from legal gambling, that you're not a lobbyist, a state, local, or municipal government entity, or a member of Congress. So you need to be able to check those. If you can't check those, then you're not eligible. Next page. This is where we start getting into the basics of your specific business. You see the red parts. Those red parts are mandatory. The name of the business, your EIN number, type of organization, your gross revenues, what's called your cost of goods sold. For some of you, that may be a foreign label because you're in more of a service business. That's just, you're going to be your operating costs over a 12-month period. There's a few more categories for other kinds of income, depending on the kind of business you are. Next page. And then a little more demographic information, such as your address, phone number, zip code, when you were started, your email address, what your business, what kind of business you are in, and how many employees you had as of January 31st, 2020. Next page. And then we're going to get information on each owner. It's very straightforward information: first name, last name, social, email, birth date, place of birth, whether they're a U.S. citizen, and their address and zip code. Very simple demographic information. Go ahead, next page. We're going to seek a little additional information. So mainly this is finding out whether you are currently or have recently been involved in a variety of legal or legal situations or incarceration. The second question has to do with whether you've been debarred from the federal government for doing business with the federal government. And then we want to know if anybody helped you with this application and the fee that they charged you. Next page. And by the way, there's no need for you to pay anybody to help you with this. This is, as you can see so far, a very simple process. So you should be able to do this yourselves with no problem. So I think the final page, there's one more. Let's switch the page. We should have one more on this one.
That's it.
Okay. Now, and then here you want to say, I do want to be considered for the advance of up to $10,000. So you would check that box, please. Put in your bank name, account number, routing number, and then click the little box at the bottom that says, I certify under penalty of perjury, everything I've done is correct and true. And that basically concludes the application process. Let's go to the next screen, Gabriella. This information would be verified, your credit will get checked, will contact you generally within a week. It should come to you then with an amount that we think is appropriate for the loan, and then present to you some final loan documents to sign. That process takes about 4 weeks. You sign those, and then we will make an initial disbursement up to a maximum of $15,000 or 2 months of working capital. Not that doesn't count the up to $10,000 advance. And that initial disbursement should take place within a week. So this entire elapsed time here, putting in the application until you get that initial disbursement, normally takes about 5 weeks. Next page. Once you get this loan and once the money starts flowing to you, if you find that it really isn't enough, maybe some things got calculated incorrectly, then just send us some additional information and request it to be increased, and we will certainly try to find a way to do that. If by the same token you find that you have more than you need, then contact us and we can reduce it. If you get turned down, you get 6 months to provide us with additional information that helps us say yes. If that can't get done and you get denied a second time, then you get yet another 30 days in order to appeal it. But the moral of this story is make absolutely sure you give us everything that we ask for in as much detail as possible. We aren't trying to be intrusive. What we're trying to do is find a way to say, yes, we would like to support you. Next page. We'll talk now about the Payroll Protection Program loans. Go ahead. These are intended really for payroll. They do include some operating expenses, things like rent, utilities, and interest on your mortgage. But they are really focused on your payroll. Now, there's a confusion sometimes. Payroll, according to the Internal Revenue Service, who I am not, and I can't speak on their behalf, but they tend to claim that as somebody for whom you are generating a W-2. So you're doing payroll deductions, they're paying into the unemployment compensation system, et cetera, et cetera. If it's a contractor and you're paying them with a 1099, then they're not an employee. Next page. So you are eligible if you have less than 500 employees. There are some nonprofit categories, specifically 501c3 and 501c19. As with the EIDL loan, you can have more than 500 employees and still qualify based on our size standards. Really important is this last bullet. If you're in hospitality or in the food business, then there's a new standard just for you that says you can have up to 500 employees per restaurant or hospitality location. So if you have 10 locations, if each one is under 500 employees, then you may apply for a PPP for each of those locations. Next page. These loans are pretty short. They're for 2 years with an interest rate of 1%. Payments are not, you don't make any payments for the first 6 months. There's no collateral, no personal guarantee, and there are no fees for these loans. But here's the thing that makes them so interesting to a lot of people is that the loan can be forgiven up to 100%. And that forgiveness is based on you maintaining or quickly rehiring your employees and maintaining them at their salary level. So if you normally employ 10 people on average per month at an average of $1,000 each, then that means we're looking for you to have 10 people hired at $1,000 each. And be reduced if you are hiring fewer than that or if you're paying them less. But it can be fully forgiven as long as you have spent the money only for payroll, interest on mortgage, rent, and utilities, and at least 75% has to be for payroll. So if you borrowed, let's say, $1 million in this PPP program and you spent it just as it's described here in the 8 weeks following disbursement of the loan, then you would not have to pay that loan back. The SBA would actually pay that loan on your behalf. The way that you get this loan is you work with one of the existing SBA lenders. There's normally about 200 in the Houston district. I can tell you right now there's 376 banks in the Houston area that are participating in the PPP program. So there are a lot of lenders to choose from. They all started processing applications on April 3rd. Whoever you currently work with, I think that's where you would start. Whoever you have your business banking with, contact them and see if they are doing these PPP loans. If they are not, then you may need to look for an entirely new banker to help you with this. So go to my website again, look under the coronavirus category, and there's a list of lenders. There's a column on that lender list that says that indicate whether they are accepting brand new customers with whom they've never had a banking relationship. Right now, I think there's about 15 that I am aware of. So you definitely have those choices. That little map is of my district, Harris County right in the middle. So anywhere in that area, that's where these lenders are specifically focused on. Next page. This is what the PPP application looks like. It's fairly simple, and it's pretty much the same as the economic injury disaster loan with a few differences, just mainly in layout. So we're asking for what kind of organization you are. We're asking for your name, how to get in touch with you, etc. Really important, right across towards the bottom, it says average monthly payroll. Let's say your average monthly payroll is $1 million. And then you're going to multiply it by 2.5. And you'll wind up with a $2.5 million loan. That's the way this will work. You're basically going to be funded for 2 months worth of payroll and a little extra to be able to pay those other categories that I mentioned, which would be rent, mortgage interest, and utilities. Next page. We want to know about each owner that owns more than 20%. If you have more than 2 owners, then you use a separate page. And then there's a few questions, and they're really pretty straightforward, and they're very similar to the ones on the EIDL application. So have you ever been debarred from doing business or receiving assistance from the federal government? Are you delinquent on a loan to the federal government that has resulted in default? Do you have common management between your business and others? We need to know that because sometimes one person will own 15 companies. When you add them together, they're not a small business. So this is limited to small businesses. And we want to know if you've received an economic injury disaster loan. That doesn't mean you can't receive PPP. That just means we may have to do some separate bookkeeping on the way the PPP loan gets done to accommodate the EIDL loan. Let me talk about that for a second, and then we'll switch the screen. So if you applied for an economic injury disaster loan and it includes payroll, for PPP, you're receiving assistance from the government double of what you actually need. So what we would do here is we would take that economic injury disaster loan and refinance it into the PPP. If that's not the case, and you got an economic injury disaster loan, and you also got the advance money, and let's say you got $5,000 on the advance, then we would need to account for that here, and that much would not be included in the forgiveness because then you'd wind up being forgiven twice for basically the same thing. Next page. But bottom line, it makes no real difference whether you got both of them or not. We just have to do some accounting. So a few more questions, and these are particularly important because 5 and 6, if you answer yes to these, you won't be able to be funded. So one of them is to whether you've been prosecuted for a felony in the last 5 years, and one is whether there are current criminal charges. And I'll leave that for you to read those and decide whether those apply to your business. I also want to know that the principal place of residence for employees is in the United States because these are the only ones that are covered. If you have 20 employees outside the United States, this will not fund their payroll. Go ahead, next page. You're going to certify, and once again, I can leave you to read that, but you're going to certify essentially that everything you're doing is true and correct, and you understand that bad things can happen if you're lying. Next page. Not that anybody on this call would ever do that. Then the final page of this are just what we call a certification page, where once again, you're going to initial these statements that you truly are impacted by the COVID virus and that you've done a good job reporting your payroll and you promise everything is correct and true. This is a very important page to the lender that you're working with because they need to have this on the file before they can give you the money. Next page. There we are. So what you're going to need as you're getting ready to do a PPP, you need to get your payroll records together. So if you use a payroll processor, they should be able to provide you with some reports. If you do it yourself, then say with QuickBooks, then you should be able to generate the information you need right out of QuickBooks to be able to support what you're doing. But you do want to share that with the lender that you're working with, because we have told them that they must confirm the payroll numbers. They're not going to confirm a lot of the other stuff, but they must confirm the payroll. If you don't have that, because let's say you're a sole proprietor, then we're going to need, or not we, but the bank is going to need to see your 1040 for 2019. So it doesn't say this on this page, but they are going to need that. And a lot of you may have contractors you work with. So that's what they need, is a 2019 that shows their net income on line 31. Once you take it, it's on the Schedule C, that will constitute their pay. They'll take that, divide it by 12, multiply it by 2.5, and that should be their loan as a sole proprietor. Next page. I want to share with you just some general information. Once again, go to your existing bank. Whoever your current business banker is, they may have something to help you out. We have been hearing about some special programs right now available at People Fund and Lift Fund. I can't tell you anything about it other than if you think you need some assistance and they would be interesting, go check their websites out. I know that they have things that they're offering. The Texas Restaurant Association has started a grant program to help business restaurants that are affected. The Galveston Economic Development Partnership has organized with some banks for those banks to do a short-term loan program. So the Galveston EDP isn't actually doing the loan. The banks are. They've just put together the program. And then there are various nonprofit aid organizations around the city that have begun to do some things to help businesses. Whoever you can think of that might fall in that category, I would just urge you to check their websites. You may find that they have something to offer for you. I know that the IRS has got a few interesting opportunities for you to get some relief throughout the year. And SBA is working with IRS right now to put together some webinars to instruct you about those. Next page. And we're almost done. Really important page. I mentioned earlier our partners, the Texas Gulf Coast Small Business Development Center, Houston SCORE, and the Women's Business Center. You can see their information there. I urge you to give them a call if you need help with any of the things I discussed previously. So as an example, right now, you might be thinking about pursuing a PPP or an EIDL or both. Well, they can counsel as it relates to that. They won't do it for you, but they can certainly help you with the process. Really importantly, is the bottom right-hand corner is the contact information for SBA here in Houston. You want to look at that first yellow part, my website, go there. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can sign up for email updates. We send updates as frequently as we have relevant information to send you. Right now, that's almost every day. And you can also follow us on Twitter, and we try to send some similar or even identical information via Twitter. Next page. It's really unfortunate that there's a lot of people trying to take advantage of businesses that are in pain right now. So if you go to a website or you get an email and it has an SBA logo, that does not mean it is the SBA. There are all sorts of scammers around right now. You want to look for whether the website or the email has the .gov designation. So my email address, for instance, does not end in .com like most of yours does. It is in .gov. If somebody contacts you and says they can make sure they can guarantee approval of an SBA disaster loan, or that they can get you in front of everybody else so you get expedited service, there is no mechanism for them to do that. That does not exist. They are frauding you. So please keep all this in mind. If you decide you're going to use somebody to do your application for you, and again, I don't think you need to do that, but if you do, then we limit the fees they can charge you. So you should be, make yourself aware of that as well. Next page. So these are some common questions we get asked. You're going to find this slide deck and the related lender list. So there's the website. That's also where you can find out about banks offering PPP loans. Some folks have applied for an economic injury disaster loan. They want to know how they can check status. You can check that status, but basically you call them at that phone number you see on the screen, or you email them, and we'll show you that again, I think, in a minute. And then they can be able to give you status that way. There's not an automatic process for looking up status. Some people want to know, are EIDL loans forgiven like the PPP loan? They are not. The advance is a grant, so it is forgiven, but the rest of the loan is not. But it is generally over a 30-year term, so we're trying to make it as inexpensive as possible to help you out. Mentioned earlier that the portion of the EIDL that is grant is up to $10,000 based on your number of employees. You can get both of those, an EIDL loan or a PPP loan or both. Just make sure that you don't duplicate the payroll cost in between them. Go ahead to the next page. Here we are. We get the question a lot, which one should I apply for? Well, that depends on the individual characteristics of your business. I will tell you that for businesses that have a lot of operating costs, like a manufacturer that's got to buy parts, they pay contractors to come in and maintain their equipment on a regular basis and maybe do safety inspections, and they pay transportation costs. Well, none of those things are covered under a PPP. Remember, PPP is really meant for payroll over an 8-week period. It's not meant for longer than that, and it's not meant for much more than payroll. So it may make sense that you have both of these available to help your business get through this. We don't know how long this is going to last, but probably we've been using 4 to 6 months from the time that we say it started, which was January 31st for EIDL, or February 15th for PPP. But since we're talking about EIDL, that would mean basically through July. That doesn't mean when you talk to one of the economic injury disaster folks that they will offer something for 6 months. They may offer 3 months. They may offer 9 months. It all depends on, at the time, what we are being told as the likely duration of this disaster. And the last question on this page is now becoming quite uncommon. People that applied for the economic injury disaster loan in the early days of this disaster, before April, they didn't have the ability to request the advance at that time. So they can go back and do the application I just showed you all over again. It should be pretty easy to do. Request the advance, and then those two computer records will wind up being combined, but you won't lose your place in line. So you'll be in whatever place you were when your disaster application had been considered. Next page, please. So just once again, those are the relevant phone numbers and email address for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Customer Service for you to contact them if you need them. There's a reminder that on my website, you can go find the current lenders for the PPP loans. Then those, once again, are the contact phone numbers for our direct resource partners. So there's about 250 counselors and mentors between the three of them that are available to you completely free of charge. And then I think if you want to take us to the last slide, Gabriella, that wraps up the presentation.
Yeah, that's it. That's all we have.
That's it. Easy.
That's it. This is really easy. Okay, Tim, I have like a question. If there's one piece of advice you give to small business owners, what would that be?
If you have not yet put in place financial support for your business to get through this terrible economic problem we're in, then definitely focus on that. If you're not sure which of these two would benefit you, then I would urge you to contact one of these three resource partners that you see on the screen, and they will be able to give you advice on which one makes the most sense, or whether to do both. Once you have that financial assistance in place to help get your business through that, then the follow-on, Gabriella, is I really want you to spend some planning for what are you going to do when business starts coming back. You may not want to do things the way you used to do it. There may be a better way to do it now. There may be a smarter way. There may be a more efficient way. You may want to approach how you pursue new customers in a different way. We want you to come out of this strong and growing and becoming more prosperous. So take advantage of the time now, once you get some financial assistance in place, to make sure you are ready to be an awesome, formidable company when you come out of this disaster.
Wow, great advice. I know a lot of people are trying to survive, but now we have to think about the next stage. So I have a question from you, and I don't know if you're going to be able to help this person, but someone says, I don't have the best credit and I really need assistance. I received an email from the SBA on my application. I've attended at least 9 webinars. Who can really grant me certainty on assistance?
Well, I don't know. Say, I'm looking at the question. So you received an email from the SBA on your application. So I'm going to assume then that means it's the economic injury disaster loan. We don't have a formal defined standard for instance, credit score. So what the bank might say to you, the bank, whoever that is. So some lender that you go to, they might look at your specific situation, might say, yeah, you know what, your credit score is not quite good enough. And we think you should go somewhere else. That same credit score might be absolutely okay for the SBA. Our main focus is, do you have the cash flow to repay this loan? That's the main focus. If you have impaired credit, you have a lower than average credit score, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a no. So I hope that answer is helpful. Now, depending on your industry, right now, as I mentioned, I know that there's programs at Lift Fund. There's, and I think that one is also intended to be for folks that really need help right now. I don't know the details, but I would encourage you to go look at it. They did something similar after Hurricane Harvey, and they had, basically, they tried very hard to fit every business they could into that program to be able to give them some relief to get through this. I would encourage you to look at that. I know that Harris County launched a forgivable loan program. I think that the demand on that was absolutely overwhelming. So I don't know what the status is. I'm not part of Harris County government, but I would encourage you to look at that. That may be another good choice. And if you're not in Harris County, if you're in, let's say, Fort Bend, then take a look at this the county of Fort Bend or the city that you're in, and see if they have some kind of program they're offering. I'm not aware of any, but those things do tend to happen in light of disasters like this. I hope that's it.
I have another question here, Tim. It says, if you have not filed for 2019 taxes but have the 1099s, will 1099 suffice to prove self-employment income?
I do not think so. I haven't digested, just today or maybe yesterday, we issued to all the banks the guidance that they need for sole proprietors. And I have not digested all of that all the way yet. But essentially, if you're paid on 1099s and you have not done your 2019 tax returns, I think the answer is go ahead and do it. You know, you need to be able to go to the bank with with your 1040 showing your net profit on line 31. If you can't do that, then I'm pretty sure the bank is going to say they can't help you. And they're going to tell you that because we've told them they have to be able to see your tax return to be able to calculate the net profit so that they can determine what the payroll amount will be.
Okay. I want to go back to another slide that you mentioned here, because a lot of people want to know if you're going to be able to have access to this slide. And I see that on your PowerPoint, you said people can go to www.sba.gov/Texas/Houston. Is that correct?
That is correct. It is there.
Okay. I have somebody else that says, how can we find out about our application for the disaster loan?
Yeah, so you would use the phone number you see on the screen right now. Call them if you're talking about the economic injury disaster loan. If you're talking about the PPP loan, then you would contact the lender with whom you filled out the application.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. I don't know if anybody has extra questions, and see everyone saying thank you. But Tim, I wanted to say thank you so much. I know you've been giving us updates every day about SBA. I really appreciate you guys coming in today and giving us this slide. Again, you and your team have done a wonderful job. So thank you again. I don't know if you have last words you would like to say or anything else.
Just that I hope everybody does well. We want every one of you to do well, to get through this, and to be able to recover and grow.
Well, thank you, Tim. And again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, my team, for being here. And thank you so much. And we'll share an edited version of the video later, maybe by Friday. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.